Hello, you beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of The Soulful Self. I'm your host, Hannah, and today I'm going to be diving into a topic that I find absolutely fascinating, and that is past lives. Obviously, this is a topic that could be seen as controversial. However, this is something that I believe deep, deep, deep to my core, and I always have. And it has taught me and helped me understand so many different things in my life, about my life, trauma, pain, things that have been things that have shown up for me in this life that I have carried in from previous lives. So I want to dive into this. It's very deep, and I hope that you guys enjoy this. And I'm just going to get right into it. I have always believed in past lives. I actually have these very distinct memories from my childhood of doing something and remembering, like, oh, this is not the first time I've done this. And it's just been something I've always believed to my core, that there is no way that God created us and said, you have one shot to figure it out. And if life has taught me anything, it's that you don't just have one shot to figure it out. We learn from our failures, and we have to fail in order to grow and succeed and figure out what works. Life would be so boring, and we would learn absolutely nothing if we tried one thing and it just worked the first time every time. So, why would the concept of life and consciousness be the same? There's no way. And also, when it comes to physics, they say energy cannot be created or destroyed. So our soul doesn't just evaporate into nothingness when we die. I believe that I believe that our consciousness just exists somewhere else or as something else, and that we live many, 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 many different lives. And for myself, as I've gone through my spiritual journey, as I've gone through different lessons and different phases of my life, there have been different past lives that I have connected with and had remembering of, different things that I have been, where I have gone, different worlds I've lived in, all these different things, because I know that I have an old soul, and I know that I've had all these different experiences. And something I find really interesting about myself that I learned about my human design chart, I have a 3-5 profile, and I'm not an expert in human design, but I believe the number 5, the theme of it is I have to learn the lessons so that I can teach them. I am a really good teacher because I have lived through all of these things, and I understand them on such a deep level that it makes me a good teacher. And it makes a lot of sense as to why I want to have a podcast and why I want to be a coach and why I want to help usher in this new but ancient way of living into this world. So it's just cool when stuff like that lines up. So I have a theory about past lives, and it's just something that I don't know if I've channeled from source or it's just kind of been how it makes sense to my brain, is that we all live many different lives, because essentially our soul is on a journey to learn all of these different life lessons, and we all have to learn the same life lessons in order to, I want to say, ascend. I don't know if that's the correct word, but from my understanding is we start out as a soul, a fresh little baby new soul. We've had no experiences, we know nothing. And throughout all our different lives, we learn these different lessons. And as you learn the lesson, you know it forever. Your soul knows that. It doesn't matter about your physical body, your soul knows that. And when you come into your next life, you come with the wisdom, the understanding of these lessons that you have learned previous. So, essentially, if life was a video game, if our consciousness was like a video game, even though when you die, you have to restart at the beginning, you already know what you need to do to get to where you left off. And in a way, we kind of pick up where we left off. So, the vibration in which we ended our previous life at is actually where we will start our next life at. So, every single person, every single soul has to go through all these different experiences so that we can learn the same lessons. And it doesn't necessarily have to happen in the exact same order. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we all figure it out on the fifth try. Maybe you learn this lesson in 25 minutes, or maybe it takes you 25 lifetimes. It really depends on so many different factors. But I think it is so interesting. And I think that, and I don't believe that I come back as Hannah every time. I'm not Hannah every time. I've been many different things. I've been a male or female. I've been not just human, but other things like fairies or mermaids or whatever it is. If there's like anything that you have felt really, really called to in this life, whether it be, again, fairies or mermaids or witches or dragons or whatever, chances are pretty freaking high that you have lived a past life as one of those things. Also, as you learned about history, if there was ever a time where you were like, I don't think that was quite right, that to me is because you probably lived through that period of history and you probably more understand the actual truth of what happened and not the translated or mutated version of what we had been taught. So your soul could have lived when Jesus was here. Your soul could have lived through World War II. Your soul could have lived through whatever, all these different periods of history. So if there's a certain era of history or like place that you feel so called to go, it's so interesting because it can be your soul wanting to unlock a memory or just reminding you of like where you have been. And I've had some really cool experiences in my life by honoring that and really tapping into that. So cool. The next place that I really, really want to go is Greece and Egypt. I know that I had a lot of lives down in that area, and I would love to go and see and explore and see what I can tap into from that ancient wisdom. So just something to keep in mind. If you feel super drawn to something, if something just makes sense to you, chances are you've been there, you've done that, or maybe that's where you're on to next. Who knows? So once we've come back and we've learned all of these lives, then I believe that we don't necessarily come back to the earthly realm, but maybe stay in way more high vibrational dimensions or realms or whatever you want to call it. And these would be souls like our spirit guides or archangels, angels, beings who have extremely high vibrations, and their job is to help us hear from the other side, from heaven, from higher dimensions, whatever you want to believe. I believe we're kind of all talking about the same thing. So this is also really interesting because of numerology. I don't know if you guys know anything about numerology, but essentially there are life path numbers based off of your birthday number added together. And the life path number goes from 1 through 9, and then after 9 there can be 11, 22, or 33, and these are master numbers in numerology. So based off of my theory of that we learn all these lessons and we keep coming back until we figure it out, is that we essentially have to go through all the life path numbers 1 through 9 and like master that number. Once we've mastered that number, we move on to the next number. And I don't necessarily think it goes in order of 1 through 9. I think you could do them in any order, but once you master those numbers, then you would come back as an 11, then 22, then 33. And then once you've mastered all of it, you wouldn't necessarily come back here, unless I think right now in the history of the world is a little bit of an exception because we are going through such a spiritual energetic shift, and life is going to be very different than humans have ever experienced on planet Earth before. I think there are a lot of very, very old souls who chose to incarnate right now to help with this shift and to help usher in the new Earth and what that's going to look like, because I don't even know if we can actually fathom how beautiful that's going to be. but it's coming, I promise. I've been saying this for years, and I'm never going to back down on this theory, this feeling, this understanding I have. And it's happening right now all around us. If you've been paying attention to anything, okay, I believe that, you know, what's not serving us is crumbling away. It kind of shot itself in the foot. So that's out the door, and the new is being ushered in. So there are a lot of old souls on earth right now to help usher this in and steer humanity back in a direction that's actually positive. So again, this is my understanding. So I am a all of my astrology numbers are actually 11. I've always been very drawn to the number 11, so I think that's pretty cool. And I know that I am here to be a spiritual teacher, hence the podcast and everything else that I am here to create. So this is what I understand about past lives. So now I want to dive into some things that I've learned about my own past lives, what I've tapped into. And I know there's a lot more where this comes from, and there will be more things that I will remember as I go. But even for instance, this one day, this was years ago, back when I used to smoke weed, I was pretty stoned and I was sitting there watching my friend play a video game. And I don't really play video games, but I was just watching, and they didn't know how to play this video game because it didn't come with instructions. Like, usually it'll tell you with little tags, like what you're trying to do, and they were just trying to figure it out. And their character was a pirate. But it was interesting because you didn't see the little character running around. You just saw the arms doing movements as if it was like virtual reality or like third person. I don't know what you would call that. Anyway, there was a hole in the boat, and he was scooping water out of the boat to keep it afloat. And I'm sitting there and I was like, oh, that sucks when that happens. And then I'm like, wait, like, how would I know that? And then I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I've done that before. I'm like, in a past life where I was a pirate, where I lived at sea, and I just was scooping water out of the boat when there was a little leak, and it's so annoying and it's frustrating, and you're like, ugh. And I just remembered that, and it's like so interesting. So there was a life or a series of lives that I then kind of snowballed into opening up my awareness to, me being a pirate and also a mermaid. And then shortly after that, I ended up going to Australia, and I spent a lot of time in the ocean. And it was so cool because I grew up in the prairies. I've only been to the ocean maybe a handful of times in my entire life. So living right next to the ocean and getting to spend like 3 months touching the ocean essentially every single day was so cool because I got to just feel like the energy of the ocean was so familiar to me. And I really do not have a fear of the ocean. I'm not saying I would just like want to just jump into the ocean in the middle of the ocean. I know there's some crazy shit in the ocean, but I remember being a mermaid. I remember Atlantis. I remember just all of this wisdom came pouring back to me to do with the ocean and like lifetimes where I had such a deep connection to the water. And actually, when I was a kid and we went on a cruise ship, like people were, we danced on a cruise ship one year, and it was on the way there, it was fine, and then on the way back, it was super wavy, and people were so seasick. All these people, all these moms from dance got so sick, and I felt so calm. Like, I remember going to sleep when it was so wavy and just feeling like it was rocking me to sleep, and I just loved it. I'm like, oh. And then I think back and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a past life where I just spent so much time on the ocean that it learned to be comforting for me. And then this is another thing I want to say actually before I dive into more of my past lives is like, I believe that irrational fears, and I believe that irrational fears are ways that you died in a previous life. So if somebody is like deathly afraid of the ocean or spiders or snakes or whatever it is, heights, it's probably a way that you died in a past life, and it's kind of your soul's way of being like, we're not doing that again. I was killed by a spider. I ain't being killed by. I ain't trusting that again. And it's almost a defense mechanism. So I think it's definitely something that could possibly be overcome. And don't quote me on this because I ain't a psychologist, but I think like if you had that understanding and that realization that you felt so afraid of this specific thing because it had previously killed you, but it's not going to kill you in this lifetime, maybe that fear would go away. But I do really believe that's why we have irrational fears, right? There's no rational reason as to why we should be so afraid of something. But wouldn't it make sense that that's because it had previously killed us and it's like our senses are heightened, like, I'm not fucking dying being bitten by a snake again. That sucked. So anyway, sorry, that's just another thing about past lives. So another past life that I know I've been a fairy. I'm super drawn to fairies. I think I personally look like a fairy. I have fairy houses, fairies, little figurines. I love fairies. I've seen a fairy in this actual real dimension here. I see them often when I go outside, but I definitely believe that I've been a fairy. I believe that I've been like in a lifetime with dragons. I believe that I've been a mermaid. I believe that I've been all these different things, but I also, and something that I think is really funny, but also probably related to past lives, is when me and my sister were really little, we would play the strangest games. And looking back, I actually think we were almost reenacting our past lives. And there was this one game we would play, and we would play it, I'm not kidding you, often, where she had this little pink princess lamp, and we would plug it into the wall and we'd turn all the lights off and we'd sit around this lamp pretending that it was like a fire, and we would hold our babies and rock our babies back and forth and hold our babies and tell them that it's going to be okay, and we would like count pennies and be like, we're so poor, all we have is this fire and each other and our babies, but we're gonna make it through it. Like, what kids are like? We had an abundance of toys, and that's what we wanted to play. And then the same thing is we would have shower baths, which I don't know if you guys ever did that as a kid, where mom would plug the bathtub but turn the shower on. So we would pretend that we were kittens in a cardboard box, like if you know the scene from Oliver and Company where the kitten's in like the soggy cardboard box and it's pouring rain, and we're like waiting for somebody to come and love us. And like we thought this was so fun. And I'm like, what is wrong with us? But I'm just like, is this like things that we've done together in the past? Is this past lives that we've lived together? Is there things that you were really drawn to when you were a kid, or like to reenact maybe, that was like weirdly comforting? I don't know. And oh, another thing that I want to say about this is specific people in your life. Obviously, for example, my sister, because I just talked about this, but soulmates, I don't necessarily think soulmates are limited to the one person you're meant to marry and have children with, but I think it shows up in many different ways. And this can be siblings or parents or really best friends or cousins or lovers or grandparents or whatever. But people, even if you meet somebody and you're just like, oh my God, I feel like I've known you my whole life. Well, probably because you've lived past lives with them. And same with my sister. It's like, I think we live every life together. And I think that we've lived like we're not always sisters, but maybe sometimes she's my mom or I'm her mom, or we're friends or auntie, or just like the relationships can always be different, but and there's always that connection. And I felt that with my grandma, like her and I just had this most special bond. And I always have this feeling like I know I'm going to see you again when I die, but if she reincarnated as my granddaughter, I think that would be so freaking cool, because I got to have that relationship with her and she's my grandma, and then I could have that relationship with her as I'm the grandma. And I'm not sure if reincarnation works that fast. I once heard that you have to be, nobody left on earth can be mourning you, or you can't be reincarnated. So, like, because I still so deeply miss my grandma in a sense that's mourning, so like her soul couldn't come back yet, maybe because I still need her guidance from the other side. But that I don't know 100%. I just heard that once and it kind of made sense to me, so I'm not actually sure how often you can come back. I don't know if it's like, I also kind of think it's time isn't linear. Time on earth is, we see it as linear, but I think that you could die and you could reincarnate your life like in history that has already happened. Like you could go back in time, because it's not, time doesn't work like that in spiritual realms. Okay, back to another past life. Okay, so this one was really big for me, and it's actually something that continuously comes up for me, which is my past life as a witch. And I think this is a really common thing for a lot of people right now. So listen to this, and if you're like, wow, that sounds like me, chances are you went through a very similar thing, because there is two wounds that are really, really common amongst women, especially. And the one wound is the sister wound. Because what happened in the era of when witches were alive is we started ratting on each other, because, they were like looking to hunt all and kill all these witches. And instead of staying, connected in this sisterhood, this bond that we had through witchcraft, we sold each other out, and that broke the bond of sisterhood. And I believe this is why women can be so catty with each other. We really hold on to grudges. Women can be really nasty with one another, but I think a lot of that hasn't been healed yet, because it actually wasn't that long ago in history where we went through this. And I don't think, none of us got to heal it in that lifetime, because we were all killed. So there is this thing about sisterhood that has been broken, and I think we all experience it with the cattiness and the pettiness and the fakeness that women have with one another, and it's really, really sad. But the other thing is blocks in our throat chakra, because we were killed for using our voice. We were killed for the knowledge and understanding and power we had as witches. And I was told that when I was a witch, I was both good and bad. So, from my understanding and what I've learned about that past life that I had, is that I was actually a really good witch. And then it got to the point where people were trying to harm us, and I essentially turned bad, because I was putting hexes on people and I was doing not good stuff. But I was, in a way, trying to protect our us, the witches. I didn't want us to all get killed off and that wisdom to be gone. But joke's on me, we still all hold that wisdom, and there's obviously a lot of things we have to learn in the physical realm again to have as much knowledge as we did as a witch in like herbology and understanding nature and the cycles and the flows, and just being so in tune with energy. And there are still witches today, and I think a lot of our lineages probably had people who were witches. And I think the way that witches are portrayed in movies and media and such is not 100% accurate to what it was like when witches were freely roaming the earth. It's just somebody who's really in tune with themselves and nature and energy. And we are so powerful. Our words are spells. That's why it's called spelling. And I think we unwillingly do witchcraft, whether you want to admit it or not. It doesn't necessarily have to be standing at a cauldron and putting frog legs into a potion, although there is a degree of witchcraft where that is true and that is used for things. But it's also like herbal medicine is witchcraft. It is knowing what plants do what and help you with what ailments, and making a concoction and giving it to somebody to heal them. That's witchcraft. So all women who have issues with sharing their voice, hi, me, Hannah, I had the biggest block in my throat chakra, and it still comes up for me every once in a while. I have to remind myself genuinely that I am safe in this lifetime to share my wisdom because I had been killed for it before. I guess that's my irrational fear right there, right? I was killed in a past life. So sometimes I have to literally calm my nervous system down from posting a video on Instagram because the fear of being the outcast, the fear of being prosecuted, the fear of all these different things that happened to me in this lifetime. And what is physically governed by the throat chakra? Our thyroid. How many women have thyroid issues? So many, so many. And how many women do you think lived a life as a witch somewhere down the lineage? And maybe it wasn't even you in a past life. It could also be somebody in your ancestry who was a witch, that wound was not healed and it was passed on. So just energy is so interesting and so cool, and everything is so connected like this that I really think our knowledge of this is coming back. We are coming back to these truths, these understandings, and now is the time we're going to heal that because everybody and their dog has a thyroid issue. It's insane, especially women, especially women. And I don't think it's a coincidence that how many of us would have went through this wound, how many of us would have went through this trauma, and or not us again, or not us, or our grandma, great grandma, somebody in our lineage. Like, I'm sure it impacts a lot of the population. So if you have issues with your thyroid, ask yourself, am I using my voice? Am I able to speak up? Am I able to say what needs to be said? Am I able to like use my voice without feeling anxious and overwhelmed and all these different things that can come with having this, I like to call it the witch wound, okay? So one more that I'm going to share about, which is actually the past life that has given me, really put me into what my niche is going to be around as a healer. And this is that I used to have really, really bad periods, like puking, shaking, almost passing out, just so bad. And I went to Reiki this one time, and as she's doing Reiki on me, she asked me if I felt something in my uterus. And I said, yeah, I feel it's like a spiky ball. And then she told me that this was a trauma I was holding in my uterus that came from a past life. And in that past life, I was a whore in a brothel. And obviously, some awful things happened to me. And in that lifetime, I clearly had some trauma to do with my sacral chakra, which has to do with sex. And this energy was stuck in my uterus and it was causing me immense pain. And it felt like I was being stabbed from the inside whenever I would have my period. And I was like, wow, ouch. And together we moved that energy out, and my periods have never been the same since. There are other changes that I made in my physical environment and in my physical life that also attributed to the change in my periods, but that energetic ball that I was holding in there that was causing me so much pain that came from a past life just helped me realize and understand that so much trauma women are holding in this space. And whether it be from an experience or a trauma they had in their current life, in a past life, or again, generationally, it could have been something that happened to your mom or your grandma or your great grandma, some form of trauma that we are holding in our uterus. And how many women have issues? PCOS, endometriosis, bad cramps, all the list goes on and on and on. And this is again something that I unlocked this wisdom, this knowledge, this understanding from tapping into my past lives. And it's funny because as soon as any time that I've learned about a past life of mine, like in a significant way, like I've shared with you, I have an understanding. I have a memory. It's like I can literally watch myself in that life and I know I remember what it was like. I remember how I felt. I remember those experiences. I remember, and these things still continue to show up in this life now because it was something that I hadn't dealt with in a past life. It was something I still needed to learn. Again, I'm a master learner in this life so that I can teach you. And I think it's my greatest gift. It's sometimes a pain in my ass, but it's also such a gift. So, anyway, I believe in past lives. I believe that God would not just give us one shot to figure it out. I believe that we all go through different forms of pain and suffering in order to learn and grow and understand. We don't have to stay in that. We don't have to sit in that for longer than needed. And I don't think we need to live in a world full of pain and suffering, but pain is also a teacher. And it is actually probably one of our greatest teachers. I think every emotion teaches us something different, but we learn from pain so much quicker sometimes than we learn from other emotions because it's so powerful. We don't want to feel that. Pain sucks. Nobody wants to constantly be in pain, and it shows up to say, hey, something's wrong. Pay attention to me, right? So if we can see it as a blessing, as a gift of, oh, I feel pain. Why? Right? We need physical pain. We need physical pain in our body because if you got hit by a baseball bat and you never felt pain, you could be bleeding internally and die and you would never know, right? If you never felt pain and you broke your leg and you're just walking around on a broken leg, it could get infected. Like all these things happen. We need physical pain to bring our awareness that, ouch, something's not right. But the same goes with emotional pain, mental pain, spiritual pain. So I just think it's something that pay attention to because it's not necessarily from this life. It can be from a past life and also ancestral. There are different types of trauma, but okay, this is kind of all I have for you about past lives. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope I said a few things that made the light bulb moments go off for you about past lives that you may have lived. And if you want to share any of your past life awakenings to me, I would absolutely love to hear about it. Send me a message. I always love hearing from you guys, and I'll see you next week. Bye.